righty, welcome into another episode of Getting Technical, brought to you by Better and Green. Wyatt, today we have four really solid ranked conference matchups here. We will be talking about three SEC matchups as well as a Big 12. And let's just kick it right off. 11 a.m. Eastern start time here. The sixth-ranked Florida Gators head to 10th-ranked Kentucky. Kentucky is a 2.5-point home favorite here. What way are you looking at attacking this early matchup Saturday morning against two top 10 SEC opponents?
Yeah, there's a couple games today that are somewhat similar to this. We have an undefeated Florida team who has maybe one good win. They beat North Carolina, beat Virginia, who sucks, beat Florida State, who is better than last year but still sucks. So I don't think they're a number six team, quality team in the country. But then Kentucky is just very hit or miss. They lost to Clemson, which was a pretty bad loss. Lost to Ohio State by 20, and then they beat Duke and beat Gonzaga. So they're seem like to be not a very consistent team. They are at home, which if you guys do not know is a huge advantage in college basketball. But I'm gonna have to go the ugly here, and I'm gonna take Florida as a dog. I'm gonna take them at the plus 2.5. Not sold on either team here, but I'm gonna I don't know. I'm going to trust that Florida is not as fraudulent as I think they are. I think they're a pretty solid team. So I just don't really believe in Kentucky, and I think Florida has more to play for in this game. They do have number one Tennessee on deck, which is terrifying. Um, Big look ahead spot, but again, a top 10 team. I don't know how much you can look ahead when they're playing Kentucky this week. So I'm going to take Florida. I'm going to take a stab at them at the plus 2.5. Don't love it by any means, but I think that's the side I will be taking.
Yeah, we're going to start disagreeing on this game, although I don't know if it's a game that I'll be betting, but I'm leaning Kentucky minus the 2.5 here. You mentioned Florida does have the number one team in the country on deck at home. So that could be a storm the court situation there. Like you said, though, tough to look ahead when you're playing Kentucky, who has been really the team to beat over the last decade or so in the SEC. But I do kind of like Kentucky at home. You mentioned the home court advantage there. And then you kind of mentioned it too. Florida just hasn't really beaten anybody yet. Yeah, they beat Virginia. Yeah, they beat North Carolina. Good names, not great teams. Unfortunately, North Carolina is in a downward spiral. I was kind of hoping they would have a decent year after Michigan State beat them. It has not happened so far. There's a lot that needs to be fixed there to turn their season around. And then you mentioned with Clemson, some big wins, Duke, Gonzaga. I don't knock them too much for the Ohio State win. I think they're uh, probably a top 25 team, a top 30 team. The Clemson loss as well on the road against Clemson. So I don't know. I don't really knock them too much for those. I think they're a little bit more battle tested here at home, laying the short number with Florida having the number one team in the country on deck. Slight lean for me on Kentucky in that one. Next up, we do have that first-ranked Tennessee hosting 23rd Arkansas. This is at 1 p.m. Eastern time. This line is not officially out yet that I could find. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it does look like Tennessee right around minus 11.5.
Yeah, I got 12, so right around there. Yeah.
12. Okay. Over under 141.5. I'll take this one. I'm not proud of it, but I'm going to lean with Tennessee. Laying the huge number. I think the line is kind of telling here. It looks so easy to take Arkansas, a ranked team, 23rd in the country, plus 12 points, especially with John Calipari, head coach. I think you and I both know that they were extremely public coming into the year. I know we took a opportunity to fade them earlier in the season. But really outside of their win against Michigan, which I do think is a solid win. I think Michigan is a pretty good team this year. I think they have a chance to go far in the tournament, but they did lose to Baylor when they kind of stepped up in class. They lost to Illinois when they stepped up in class. And that's really it. Those three teams are really their only decent teams on the schedule. And they were only able to win the one against Michigan there. Meanwhile, you have Tennessee. They beat the same Illinois team, beat Syracuse, Baylor, Louisville. So a couple decent wins for Tennessee at home on their home court. It's a big number. It's not a bet that I'm looking to probably make, but I do think the line is a little telling. I would look to actually fade Tennessee in the matchup against Florida if these predictions go as planned here. If Kentucky wins, and then if Tennessee kind of blows out Arkansas here, I will be looking to put a bet on Florida in the Tuesday matchup. But give me Tennessee as my lean. What are you liking in this second game here?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm going to take Tennessee. I think they roll in this one, maybe by 20 plus points. Not sold on Arkansas. I know they have that one win against Michigan. Michigan threw that game away. I think Michigan was up by 16 at one point in the first half. Then Arkansas went up big in the second half. Michigan came clawing back. I think Michigan was a better team. I just didn't think they executed well. And besides that game, they played Baylor, who they lost to by 5. We'll talk about them shortly. Then they played Illinois and got spanked by Illinois by 13 points there. Tennessee is just a much better team. Tennessee also beat the same Baylor team by 15, beat the Illinois team by 2. Again, it might be pretty obvious just to look at the records and say, oh, Tennessee beat these two teams. Arkansas lost to these two teams. Tennessee's at home. But I think Tennessee's just outclasses Arkansas in this game. So, yeah, I have Tennessee big. 12, fine. I seriously think they win it by 20 plus points.
Yeah, and I know you're kind of a Ken Palm guy. I'm kind of becoming more of a Ken Palm guy. I know whatever, say what you will about him, but he does have Tennessee third ranked and Arkansas all the way back at 37th. So I think that is pretty telling as well. But let's head over to our one matchup on the board that is not SEC. This is a 2 p.m. Eastern start time here. We have 25th ranked Baylor headed to third ranked Iowa State. Sorry, I do not have the line ready here. Iowa State minus 8.5 over under 150.5. I will send this one to you. Again, another decent sized spread here. How are you maneuvering around this Big 12 matchup?
I was kind of shocked when I saw this line. I thought this one was going to be very similar to that Tennessee line. Iowa State's an 8.5 point favorite. I think that's a little low. I was kind of thinking they were going to be double digits at least, if not 12 to 14 points here. With that being said, I'm still going to take the Cyclones. I'm going to take Iowa State at the minus 8.5. Again, I just think they're the much better team. Baylor, very inconsistent. They are a very young team. I know early they lost to Gonzaga in that opener by 38 points. They then lost to Tennessee by 15, lost to UConn by 4. They did beat the Arkansas team that we just mentioned, and they also beat St. John's. Again, I don't think Arkansas is going to be ranked come next week or for the next couple weeks. Probably not again this regular season, to be honest. St. John's might sneak into the rankings late, depends how they do in the Big East. But I'm just not, again, I'm not super sold on Baylor. I do think Iowa State, once again, is going to be a powerhouse in the Big 12, going to go far in the NCAA tournament, I hope. So I just think, again, they're just outclassed here. Iowa State really hasn't played that many people. They beat Marquette, beat Dayton, beat Iowa, and then lost to Auburn. Really good Auburn team by 2. I just think the spread should be double digits. I'm a little worried that it's not, and maybe I'm on the wrong side, but I seriously think Iowa State's going to win this one by at least 10. So double digits, you should win it with Iowa State. I like them quite a bit.
Yeah, I actually like Baylor in this matchup, and kind of agree. I think the spread is a little fishy there, but really for everything you just mentioned, there's no real like look ahead spot for either team here. Baylor does have 16th ranked Cincinnati on deck, but they're I'm pretty sure more focused on the Iowa State game. But you mentioned they're 9-3 against an Iowa State team who only has the loss to Auburn, who in my opinion, is probably the best team in the country. But I think people are just going to look at Baylor and see, oh, they're 9-3, multiple losses as far back in the rankings as you can get. Just an easy lay on the third best team in the country. But you mentioned those losses after getting blown out by Gonzaga, which is, no slouch by any means. It's not a bad. The way they lost was bad, but losing the game, it's not a bad opponent to lose to. Tennessee, the current number one ranked team in the country, and then UConn, the uh, reigning champion. And that game was soon after UConn's absolute collapse in Maui. So, I think they were pretty hungry to come out and get a decisive win in that game. And that was a close game. You mentioned the St. John's game. They easily could have lost that game. Jeremy Roach hit an incredible shot to win that one in double overtime. But yeah, I think Baylor hangs around in this game. I don't think Iowa State's going to be able to blow them out. Iowa State, um, they've been putting up more points, but I still think they're more of a defensive squad, more of a ultimately lower scoring team. They have put up just incredible points so far, but I think once they get into conference play, they will rely more on their defense. So I just don't see them pulling away. And then lastly, Ken Palm does have these teams quite a bit closer. Iowa State 5th, Baylor 14th. So pretty high on Baylor in the Ken Palm rankings. So give me Baylor to stick around and cover the 8.5 in that one. And then our final game on the board here, uh, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern start time. Oklahoma heads to Alabama. Oklahoma 12th ranked in the country. Alabama is 5th. The current line here, I believe, is Bama minus 10.5. Over under a whopping 163.5. Um, I just talked a lot, so I'm going to send this one back over to you. What's your prediction here for Oklahoma, Alabama?
Yeah, so this Oklahoma team, I think, is very similar to this Florida team. I don't think either of them are as good as they're ranked. With that being said, I was on Florida, but I really don't think Oklahoma's good. Michigan blew that game against Oklahoma, and that's Oklahoma's best win. They hit a 4 point play of 4 minutes or 4 seconds left to, they were down by three, hit a 4 point play, go up by one. Then they also beat Arizona, who we talked about. I don't know if we talked about them, but Arizona's terrible this year. I think they have like 5 or 6 losses. I'm just so they just haven't beat anyone. So yeah, they are 13-0 with two decent games, but Arizona's not ranked. Michigan's not ranked anymore. Then you go over to Bama. Bama might have a couple of the best wins of the year. Win against Illinois, win against Powerhouse Houston, win against Rutgers, who I think is going to be much better than people think this year, win against Creighton, win against North Carolina, who we mentioned is struggling a little bit. Does have a loss to Oregon, which is not great, and they did lose to Purdue, which is turning out to be not so great either. But just yeah, the resume here for Bama is just it's pretty impressive. And again, they do have some consistency issues. I do compare Bama to Kentucky quite a bit. I think they're a very similar style team, super high scoring. But if they're not hitting, they don't really play much defense, so teams can hang around. But I don't think Oklahoma's good. Just like in football, I think this could be a situation where they really struggle in their own conference and could get out of the rankings pretty quick here. So I'm going to take Bama on once again on the big spread at the 10.5. Actually, like the under of this one a lot too. I know it's kind of sacrilegious to take an under in a Bama game, but I don't think Oklahoma's going to score much. I think it's going to be like a 80-60 type of game. So I'll take Bama to 10.5.
I am right there with you, and I think this one might be my favorite on the board that we're talking about here. And yeah, you kind of mentioned it. I think Oklahoma is going to lose quite a few games in conference play. I don't think they can really keep this going. And you mentioned the strength of schedule at this point, not great. They should have lost to Michigan. I think we were both on Michigan money line in that game. That was just awful, especially to have the better of the two Fears kids hit the shot. It was just extra pain in there for me. But yeah, I think if you stop Fears and if you stop their forward Jalen Moore, there's not a ton of depth to this Oklahoma team. Bama's defense is not great, but I do think they're going to be able to run the floor and just ultimately put up enough points to cover this number. Bama has depth on their team. They have 5 guys averaging double figures. Best offensive team in the country at this point, which is no surprise. It's how they've kind of made their living the last few years under Nate Oates. Really how they've had tournament success. A very hard team to stop if they're out and running and making all their shots. So yeah, I think it looks like Oklahoma's already a little bit public. People are just going to look at the records here: 11-2 versus an undefeated 13-0. Fears is starting to get some national hype, so I think people are gonna, make the connection. Oh, Fears, Oklahoma, undefeated, catching 10.5, way too many points. Yeah, I think it's too good to be true to be on the Oklahoma side. So give me Alabama to roll, and I do think that's probably my favorite bet on the board.
Yeah, for the record, that is probably mine as well. That and Tennessee. I like both those quite a bit. Possibly, and I don't recommend parlays, but possibly money line on those two. I think it would be hard for that to lose. But yeah, probably not a smart bet there.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'm actually trying to put more moneyline parlays into my repertoire here. Everything except NBA. I think you're dumb if you're parlaying money lines in NBA because those guys don't care. But why? Do you have anything else before we wrap it here?
I don't. We will have some more college basketball games or basketball podcasts coming up here with the conclusion of college football, as well as the start of college basketball conference play. So a lot of big games, easier to bet games, I think, than opposed to you know, Power Five schools playing Power Four or a Group of Five schools. So yeah, bigger and better games coming. So make sure you stay tuned to our channel.
Yeah, really looking forward to conference play as we always are. Um, and then yeah, Wyatt, you mentioned it. We filmed every single college football bowl game. We still have one left remaining today. If you do want to go check that out, we have our NFL show up and available. And like you mentioned, a lot more basketball content, hockey content coming out, um, especially after college football and then NFL winding down into the playoffs. So stay tuned for basically every sport. If you want to know about it, we'll have videos on our channel. But until next time, guys, good luck with your bets. Hope you have a profitable Saturday, and we'll see you in the next episode.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me, trust me, trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listening to cash out, that's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover all spot from the bottom to the top. Hey, shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome, welcome to our podcast. Better in Green.